Hi everyone, Hermano here. Welcome again to the channel. So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to install Arch Linux dual booting with Windows 10. And this is going to be on a UEFI system. In this case, it's going to be my laptop. So I've already installed Windows 10. This should be the first step. And before going to create the partitions I need to install Arch Linux, we need to disable two features in Windows 10. Well, one is actually on the BIOS, and that is secure boot. And just simply, we have to disable that because Arch Linux does not support secure boot. So you'll have to boot up into your BIOS in the computer and disable that. The second thing we need to disable is fast startup. And that's because fast startup basically will put Windows 10 in hibernation. And if your computer hibernates and then you boot it up again into another system, the unsafe data in the hibernation partition will be lost. So it's better to disable that. How do we do this? It's very simple. We'll just go to the control panel and we search for the power options. And we click power options here. And then we click on choose what the power buttons do. And you will see here turn on fast startup, it's grayed out. And so to turn it off, we have to click here on change settings that are currently unavailable. And we just click on the checkbox here and click save changes. So now that it's done, let's go have a look at the disk. So I'm going to go to the disk management here in Windows. I'm going to go full screen. As you can see here, I have virtually 512 gigabytes of SSD, and it's partitioned by Windows in three. So we have a recovery partition, an EFI partition, which is very important. We'll need to install GRUB in here. And we have our Windows partition. My Windows partition is about 465 gigabytes, so I need to shrink this to make place for Arch Linux. And I'm going to right click here and click shrink volume. And I'm gonna give the partition 256 gigabytes. So I'm gonna type in 256000 and hit shrink. And now I have 250 gigabytes unallocated. This is where I will install Arch Linux. So now we can close up the window and we can download our Arch Linux ISO and burn it to the USB stick and boot from there. And we'll meet back at the login prompt in Arch Linux. So I booted up my USB stick and now I'm logged in as a root in the installer of Arch Linux. So the first thing I'm going to do is to check my internet connection. So for reference, I plugged in my Ethernet cable into my laptop as it's a little bit faster than my Wi-Fi. So if I type in now IP space A, as you can see, we have here an IP with 108. Now, if you want to use Wi-Fi, you can type in now Wi-Fi dash menu and hit enter. And it's going to scan for networks. And I'm going to be presented with a list of networks. So here I could select mine. And here I could enter my password. And when I hit OK, I will be connected to the internet. But in my case, I don't need to do this as I have already an IP with my Ethernet cable. In case you are encountering slow downloads in Arch Linux, I strongly recommend you to edit the mirror list. To do this, we'll type in nano etc pacman.d/mirror list and hit enter. So as you can see, I already put the server near to me. So it's the Swiss server on the top. That means it's going to be checked first. If you want to select the server close to you, you basically go down to the line of your country. So let's say, for example, it's Poland. And you would hit now Control K to cut the text, move up to the top of the list and hit Control U, and you will have the server on the top. And then after that, you'll just hit Control O and enter to save the file and Control X to exit the editor. And to resync the mirror list, you will type in now pacman-syyy and hit enter. And the database is now synchronized to your server. So now that we took care of internet, let's move up to the disks. So I'll clean up the terminal first. And for this example, I'm going to use cfdisk. So first of all, I need to find out the name of my device. So I'll type in lsplk. And I see the device name is NVMe 0 and 1. So I'll type in now cfdisk/dev/NVMe 0 and 1 and hit enter. So we have a few information here. So you can see the first partition is the Windows recovery environment. The second partition ending with P2 is the EFI system. This is the partition we will need to install GRUB on. Then we have our Microsoft Reserve partition of 16 megabytes and the partition where Windows is installed, which is P4 of 215 gigs. And I have the free space I created before in Windows of 250 gigabytes. And this is where I want to install Arch Linux. So for this installation, I'm just going to create a room home partition and a swap file. So I'll not create a swap partition on this system. So I'll just move down with my arrow to the free space and hit enter. And I'll accept the default here of 250 gigabytes since it's the rest of the disk and hit enter. And as you can see, it has been created. It's a Linux file system, which is fine. So now I can move down to the right to write and hit enter. And I type in yes and hit enter. And the table is written. And now I can quit the program. I'm going to move to the left to quit and hit enter here. So I'll clean up the terminal. Now if I type in again lsbrk, you can see we have a fifth partition of 250 gigabytes. Now we created the partition, now we need to format it. So let's format it by typing in mkfs.ext4 and then /dev/nvme 0n1p5 and hit enter. So this partition is formatted. Now let's clean up the terminal and let's move on to the mounting. So we need to mount first this partition as this is where the system is going to be installed. So I'll type in mount /dev/nvme 0n1p5 and this is going to be mounted under the /mount directory and hit enter. Now we need to also mount the boot partition because we will need this later to install GRUB. So we want to mount the UEFI partition into the boot directory which is not existing yet. So let's type in shortly again lsbrk because as you remember the UEFI partition is the P2 partition of 100 megabytes and this is the one we need to mount on the boot directory. So first let's create the boot directory by typing in mkdir /mount/boot and hit enter. And now let's mount the P2 partition on the boot directory. So let's type in mount /dev/nvme 0n1p2 /mount/boot and hit enter. So we mounted the disk. Now we can install the base system. So I'll clean up the terminal and I'll type in pacstrap under the mount directory and the packages are base, Linux-firmware, and I'll install also editor, which I'll need later in the installation, which is nano. And when I'm ready, I'll just hit enter. So it's going to download and install the packages, and I'll be back in a second. So there you go, the base system is installed. So let me clean up the terminal again, and we can move to the next step, which is generating the fstab file. So we'll type in gen fstab -U. And this is the /mount directory and we'll append or create the fstab file under /mount /etc /fstab and hit enter. Now let's produce the content on fstab just to make sure that all partitions are there. So we'll type in cat /mount /etc /fstab. And as you can see, we have our root partition there and the boot partition is also there. So everything is correct. So I clean up the terminal. And now let's move into the installation itself and leave the installer. And to do this, we'll type in arch-root /mount because that's where installation is and hit enter. And as you can see, the login prompt now changed. And the first thing I want to do now is to create the swap file. So let's move to the next point. And I'll type in fallocate -l. And the swap file I want to create is 2 gigabytes in this case. So I'll type in 2 GB and the name is /swapfile and hit enter. Now I need to change the permissions of the swap file so that it can be read. So I'll type in chmod for changing permissions. And the permissions is 600 and the file name, so /swapfile and hit enter. Now let's create the swap by typing in mkswap /swapfile. And let's activate it by typing in swapon /swapfile and hit enter. Now let's put the swap file into the fstab file. So to do this, we'll type in nano/etc/fstab and hit enter. Move down to the empty space here and write in /swapfile space none space swap space defaults space 0 space 0. And then Control O and enter to save the file and Control X to exit the editor. Now let's clean up the terminal and let's move to the next point, the time zone. So let's type in now ln-sf/user/zone-info/Europe in my case and /Zurich in my case. You replace this accordingly to your zone and your city. And that's gonna link to /etc/local time and hit enter. Now we can synchronize also the hardware clock to the system clock. So we'll type in HW clock space -- sys2hc and hit enter. And there you go. Now let's clean up the terminal and let's move on to point 8, which is the locales. So we'll type in nano/etc/locale.gen and hit enter. Let's scroll down to the locales. Well, in my case, I'm looking for English US. So I'll just have to look for that. And the one I need is UTF-8. And I'm going to uncomment this line. And then again, hit Control O and enter to save the file and Control X to exit the editor. And now we can generate the locales by typing in locale-gen and hit enter. Okay, now we need to also edit the locales.conf file. So we'll type in nano/etc/locale.conf and hit enter. And we'll put in the string lang equal en_us dot UTF-8. And then again, Control O and enter to save the file, Control X to exit the editor. So let's clean up the terminal and move to the next point, which is creating the hostname. So let's type in nano/etc/hostname and hit enter. And I'll name my machine just simply Arch for this example. And then hit Control O and enter to save the file and Control X to exit the editor. Now we also can edit the hosts file. So let's type in nano/etc/hosts and hit enter. Move down to the empty space and type in 127.0.0.1 tab localhost. The next line, ::1 tab localhost again. And the next line, 127.0.1.1 tab the host name, so in my case arch.local domain, then a tab again, and then the host name again, so in my case Arch. You'll replace this accordingly. And then Control O and enter to save the file and Control X to exit the editor. Now let's create a password for the user. So we'll type in passwd and type the new password and retype it again. And there you go. And we can move to the next point. So I'll clean up the terminal first, and that's the bootloader. Well, we need to install the bootloader and some other packages. So let's type in now pacman-s. So the bootloader is GRUB. And because it's a UEFI system, we need to install also EFI boot mgr. And then some networking tools. So I'll install first Network Manager and network-manager-applet. I'll install also Dialog, and I'll install also wireless_tools and WPA_supplicant. And I need OS Prober, since it's going to probe also for Windows. And then I'll install mtools. I'll install also DOS FS tools and two development packages, which I'll need anyway later. So one is base-devil and the other one is Linux-headers. So pause the video if you need to, make sure that all the packages are written in correctly, and when you're ready, you just hit enter. And I'll accept the defaults here by hitting enter. And I'll accept the defaults also here and proceed with the installation. So I'll just hit enter. And it's going to take a moment to download and install everything. So I'll be back in a second. There you go. The packages are installed. So let me clean up the terminal by hitting Ctrl L. And let's install grub now. So we'll type in grub -install space -- target x86 _ 64 -EFI space and then -- EFI -directory equal. Remember, we mounted the Windows EFI partition into the boot directory of our Linux install. So we'll have to type in here /boot, then space, then -- bootloader -ID equal grub. So again, make sure everything is written correctly. And when you're ready, just hit enter. So no error reported. Now, one extra step I want to do here is to create a directory for Windows 10 under the mount directory. So to do this, I'll type in mkdir /mount /Windows 10 and hit enter. And I want to mount the Windows 10 partition, which was the P4 partition, if you remember before, to this directory here. So I'll type in mount /dev /nvme 0n1 P4 space /mount /Windows 10 and hit enter. Now we are ready to generate the grub configuration file. So we'll type in grub -mkconfig -o /boot /grub /grub.cfg. And when you're ready, just hit enter. As you can see, we have a line here saying found Windows Boot Manager on the partition. So that's going to be added to the grub bootloader when we boot up the machine. So now we can exit the installation and return to the installer. So I'll type in exit and hit enter. And we can unmount all the partitions. So we'll type in umount -a and hit enter again. And now we are ready to reboot the machine. So if everything went well, you'll see the grub bootloader with the option to boot Arch Linux and also the option to boot Windows. So I'd actually want to reboot now the machine into the installation here because I need to finish it up. So boot up your machine and I'll see you back here in the installation. So there you go. The installation was successful. I was able to see the grub bootloader with both options, Arch Linux and Windows. And now I boot in again in the Arch installation and we need to finish up some steps. So the first thing I want to do is to activate internet. So to do this, I'll type in system ctl start network manager with capital N and capital M and hit enter. And because I have an Ethernet cable, again, plugged in into my laptop, I have already an IP. Here, if you would have Wi-Fi, you'll type in nmtui and hit enter. And you can scroll down to activate a connection. And here you would select your network. Well, in my case, I would select this one and hit enter. And I would enter my password, hit OK, and allow an IP as well. But in my case, I have an Ethernet cable, so I don't need to do this. And I'll just go out of this program. And the last step is to enable Network Manager so that the next time it's going to be automatically started. So let's type in system ctl enable Network Manager with capital N and capital M and hit enter. And there you go. Now we can create a new user. So I'll type in user add space -m and -G and then wheel, because this is going to be a sudo user, and then the username. So in my case, hermano, and hit enter. I want to create a password for this user. So I'll type in passwd and then the username. So hermano, and type in a new password and retype it. And now I need to give hermano the sudo powers. So we'll type in editor equal nano and then sudo and hit enter. And scroll down until I see the first wheel group, which is the one which says all equal all, and uncomment this line. and then hit Ctrl O and Enter to save the file and Ctrl X to exit the editor. Now let's clean up the terminal. Let's move on to the graphic drivers. So I have an Intel graphic cards in my laptop, but I'll show you also the packages for the AMD and NVIDIA cards. So I'll type in now pacman-s. Now for the Intel cards, you'll type in xf86-video-intel. So in my case, I'm gonna hit enter now because I need to install this driver. So I'll just hit enter, accept the installation by hitting enter, and the installation is done. Now, if you have an AMD card, instead of Intel, you will replace this with AMD GPU and hitting enter and follow through with the installation. And if you have an NVIDIA card, you will type in the whole thing here away and type in now NVIDIA. This is the first package. And the second package is NVIDIA-utils. And hit enter and proceed with the installation. Now that the graphics driver are installed, we can move forward to the display server. So in my case, I want to use Xorg, and I'll type in pacman-s and then Xorg and hit enter. Accept the defaults by hitting enter and hitting enter to proceed with the installation. And it's gonna take a second here to install everything, so I'll be back in a moment. There you go, that was pretty quick. And I'll clean up the terminal. So let's move on to the display manager. So we have several choices here. We could install GNOME or KDE or many other desktop environments. Now for this example, I'm going to install GNOME, but I'm going to give you also the packages for KDE. So we want to install the display manager for GNOME, which is GDM. So I'll type in pacman-s space GDM and hit enter. And I'll accept the installation by hitting enter. Now we installed the display manager. We need to also enable it so that it's going to be started the next time we boot the system. So let's type in systemctl enable. In my case, GDM. If you install STDM instead, you would replace now GDM with STDM. In my case, I just hit enter and this is done. So I clean up the terminal and I want to install GNOME in my case. So I'll type in pacman-s and I'll just install GNOME. This is the package. And I could install also GNOME Extra, which is going to install also some extra packages and utilities for GNOME. If you want to install KDE, you will replace these packages with Plasma. That's the first one. Then optionally, you can install also KDE-applications, which is going to install a lot of applications for KDE. Another package which I suggest you to install is also xdg-user-dirs. This is basically going to create the users directories like music, photos, and others, which otherwise will not be installed in KDE. And another package which I recommend you to install is also package kit-qt5, which is going to provide access to the updates in the Discover software of KDE. Without this package, you will not be able to update packages from the Discover Software Center. I'm not going to use that anyway, but I recommend you to install it if you plan to do that. And once you're ready, you just hit enter and you go ahead with the installation. But in my case, I actually want to install GNOME. So I'll type in just GNOME because I don't need the extras for now and hit enter and accept the defaults by hitting enter and proceed with installation by hitting enter. Now it's going to take a moment to install the packages here, so I'll be back in a moment. So the installation is done. Let me clean up the terminal. I'm going to hit now reboot and I'm going to choose from the bootloader again Arch Linux because I want to boot in installation, and I'll greet you then in GNOME in a second. So there you go, guys. We are now in Arch Linux, GNOME desktop environment. Everything worked well. And the first thing I want to do now is pull up the terminal and check for updates. So let me pull up the terminal and I'll go here full screen, increase the font size and type in sudo pacman-syu and hit enter, my password. And everything is up to date, so everything looks good. So I'll clean up this window here. Now the installation is basically done. There is still one point I would like to show you, and this is how to remove Linux and stay with Windows. Because it's not a matter only of removing the Linux partition in Windows, it's also a matter of removing GRUB, which was installed, remember, in the UEFI partition in Windows. So let me switch to Windows and I'll be back with you in a second and I'll show you how to do that. So guys, we are back in Windows here. So I'm gonna open up the disk management again. And I'm gonna make this big here. So as you can see, we have here our 250 gigabytes Linux partition. So logically, what we would do now, if we want to delete Linux, we would right click on this partition here and hit delete volume. And I'll click yes. And so if I want to use again Windows with the whole disk, I'm just gonna go here on the C partition, right click on it and hit extend volume and type next, accept the defaults here, which is gonna take the rest of the disk, and hit next and hit finish. And then again, I have my whole Windows partition here. Now the thing is that we have still GRUB installed on the EFI partition. We need to get rid of this, otherwise we will see it again when we boot up next time. So let me close this up. The problem in Windows is the EFI partition is not visible. So we'll need to do this visible before. And to do this, I'm going to use Windows PowerShell. So I'm going to open up Windows PowerShell. So the program I need to use is diskpart. So I'll type in diskpart and hit enter. And I need to see the volumes on my disk. So I'll type in list volume. And as you can see, we have three volumes. We have the recovery volume, we have our C volume where Windows is installed, and we have our healthy system volume for 100 megabytes. This is our EFI partition. Then we need to select this partition first. So we'll type in select vol 2 and hit enter. And now we need to assign a letter to this volume so that it appears in Explorer. So we'll type in assign letter equal. You can choose any letter you want as long as it's still free in the system. In my case, I'll type in X and hit enter. Now, if I open Explorer and I go to my PC, you'll see X is now visible. Now, if I try to click on it, you can see it's not currently accessible. Even I click continue, there is still an error coming up. So we need to find another way to access this. And to do this, I'll hit now Control Alt Delete and select Task Manager. And from here, I'm going to hit File, Run New Task, and I'm going to hit Browse here. And I'm going to scroll down to my PC. You'll see we have our X partition here, and if I double click on it, I can access it. So as you can see immediately, we have a GRUB folder here, which we need to delete. So I'll just right click on it and hit Delete and hit Yes. Now, if we go into the EFI folder, we have also here a GRUB folder, which we need to delete. Just delete this one, not the boot folder and the Microsoft folder, just the GRUB folder. So right click on this and hit delete and hit yes. And now GRUB is not anymore present in the system and you will not see it when you boot the system again. So we can close up this window by click cancel, hit cancel again, close the task manager. And now we need to remove the letter, otherwise it will be still visible in Explorer. So we'll type in remove letter equal X in my case. And as you see in Explorer now, the X drive is now gone. And we can exit now this part by typing in exit. And there you go, we can close now the window. And this is how you can remove GRUB from the system. So this is the end of the video. It was a little bit longer than usual, but I really wanted to show you not only how to install Arch Linux, but also how to remove it and how to remove GRUB from Windows. So I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. And if you want to see more, make sure you like this video by clicking the like button below and subscribe to the channel if you want to be notified of future videos. Subscriptions really helps us out, guys. And if there's anything specific you want me to cover or you have any question, please let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you in the next one.